Hello and welcome everybody to this month's edition of the Seeker's Forum. Go your own way, trusting yourself on the Seeker's path. I hope you're having a great weekend. So, what does it mean to trust ourselves on the path to awakening? Even though community is an integral part of spiritual life, this path is by definition a solitary one. Each of us is alone with his mind and with the questions that drive his spirit. No amount of support or solidarity can relieve us of this solitude, this limited sphere of existential awareness. This encounter with the truth of our own existence is fundamental to the path that we walk as people determined to live in truth and find a way of being happy despite the inequities and insecurities of the world. Now, this can only happen, this happiness, this well-being, this self-knowledge, through self-confrontation and inquiry into our ego nature. And this can be a grueling process. Facing ourselves head-on is rarely easy. What we call spiritual life, this encounter with the truth, is really one disillusionment after another, if it's working. We butt up against our limitations constantly, our fears, our prejudices, our selfishness, our meanness, all the ways that we disappoint ourselves and fall short on closer inspection. Without this disillusionment, the death of our fantasy of who we should be, we can't awaken to who we are beyond the prison of the self-conceived image. As the image of this personal self falls away, as life shakes it apart through loss or mortality, seekers begin to perceive their essential freedom. They meet the spirit that's driving them to investigate beyond the surface of their lives, this questing, inquiring spirit that's dissatisfied with superficial self-knowledge. This is the spirit in us that rebels against shallow awareness of profound experience, and also yearns to return to its own plenitude, to its full abiding knowledge of self. This recollection of wholeness constitutes the sacred longing that drives the seeker to grow and to risk, and compels her to investigate her own being. In doing so, she'll come to points at which she needs to be willing to step away from others. She'll have to learn eventually how to be alone with herself, how to find her own way among many ways, and strategies for how to share her spiritual aloneness with other people. Our guest interview this month, Stephen Batchelor, has a book called Alone with Others that I highly recommend as an investigation into this question of existential solitude and how to share it with other people on the path. The point that Stephen makes, that all teachings support, is that awakening happens in solitude and gestates in darkness, no matter how many people we're surrounded with. We are together, but we are also apart. Now, this paradox can be very difficult on the seeker's path. And that's why it's so important that we eventually learn self-reliance. That means trusting our own strange needs, our inclinations, the impulses that guide us, like teachers, like signs, and the subtle rhythms that lead us where life wants us to go and explore what it is that we need to explore. People who aren't temperamentally seekers themselves are often confused by what appear to be impulsive, inexplicable choices. Part of being a seeker is remembering how to be childlike, unpredictable, irresponsible, and foolish. We need to stop making sense sometimes, to set off in unexpected directions. In discovering who we are, we'll sometimes need to break molds, to go against rules, against dogmas, and even promises that we've made to other people in times when we were less self-aware. Each of us has to go off the rails a little to transgress common sense and adventure into unknown territory that may seem ridiculous in the eyes of the world. As Winnicott said, we are poor indeed if we are only sane. We're poor indeed if we are only sane. meaning that sooner or later we must each go our own way for our own reasons to discover who we actually are. This makes seekers the targets of scorn and judgment by people who don't necessarily share our curiosity and enthusiasm. There is, in fact, a sociological element to this isolation that I'm talking about. African Americans talk about the white gaze that dominates society and that they tend to perform for inwardly. Women talk about the male gaze through which they're trained to measure themselves in a sexist, misogynist society. As seekers, we're inclined to carry the mocking gaze of a culture that views spirituality and self-investigation as less than worthy pursuits in a lifetime. In the judgment chamber of our own mind, we may compare ourselves to some ideal that we can never achieve. Often this ideal has to do with wondering why we're not happy with the things that many other people aspire to: financial security, safety in our comfort zone, religious faith that we inherit but no longer necessarily feel kinship with. Seekers are defined by the desire for something more, for elements that seem lofty, abstract, even sometimes delusional to more cerebral types. The dissatisfaction that we feel, while painful, though, is actually our greatest ally because it pushes us out of our comfort zones, it confronts us with serious questions, and it makes the necessity of awakening clear. Just as mountaineers train certain muscle groups for climbing mountains, and every specialist learns a particular set of skills that use particular aspects of themselves that enable them to do the unique thing that they do, seekers also learn to strengthen a particular handful of traits that enable us to persevere on the path and to find our way to personal freedom. These muscles that a seeker needs include nonconformity, originality, mindfulness, and courage, all of which come from what Ralph Waldo Emerson called self-reliance. Self-reliance is the seeker's treasure trove of lessons for how to live a real life. I've been writing a book about Emerson, who was my own spiritual hero when I was a kid. And I've been looking into the elements of self-reliance and how they affect the journey to awakening. And I'd like to just share a few of them with you today, starting with mindfulness. Emerson always said that you are what you think about all day. You are what you think about all day. Paying attention is our number one priority as seekers of the truth. It's like they say in Las Vegas, if you're not present, you can't play. Unless we're mindful of the details of the moment that we're in, we might as well not be here at all, since experience is wasted. Without mindfulness, we miss the opportunities for awakening and creativity that we were talking about last month. And we also lose the ability to be our own guides on the path, to trust our own impulses, and to understand what's driving you to make your own choices. So mindfulness matters, number one. The next point is nonconformity. That's the next trait that we need as seekers, nonconformity. As Emerson put it, heed the whisper only you can hear. Heed the whisper only you can hear. This goes against most of what we're taught about being part of the majority, being team players, being reliable citizens, and so on. We're often taught to toe the line, to look for security, and to avoid the opprobrium of other people. And in order to do that, we cut our characters to suit the context we find ourselves in, and we sacrifice self-determination for acceptance. The mandate to stay put and behave, which is the mandate that most of us are given from earliest age, is actually antithetical to spiritual discovery. In a world that's suffering from a kind of madness, this fixation on ego and materialism, nonconformity is critical. Now, a next trait that we need to cultivate is originality, which touches on nonconformity. They overlap a bit. Emerson said, "Envy is ignorance, imitation is suicide." And he always emphasized the importance of following the dictates of our own unique nature. Every seeker has an original particular character with its own potentials and pitfalls, limitations, as well as strengths. This originality is a form of intelligence that draws what's ours to us and repels what doesn't belong to us from our sphere. The American spiritual teacher Howard Thurman said, "What is mine will know my face." What is mine will know my face. Originality is what inclines us toward those things that move us toward our own fruition. There's a common misconception in spiritual circles that personality is some kind of impediment, that originality is a form of egotism. But anyone who has spent time with any serious practitioners or teachers will tell you that, in fact, they become more themselves, more eccentric, more unafraid of their weirdnesses than the rest of us. They understand that being original is a gesture of godliness, not just a form of egotism. So allowing ourselves to be original helps us to hone to what is real and true for us as we move toward self-knowledge. The next trait that's important is confidence. The word confidence comes from the root meaning with faith. And it's in having faith in our own true nature, in our own originality, that authentic confidence becomes possible. Until we do that, we'll always be striving to imitate other people, to seek external permission. And we'll stay wobbly in our own intentions and our choices. As Emerson put it, without confidence, the universe is against me. Without confidence, the universe is against me. And of course, the opposite is also true. With confidence, more is possible than we may dream of. You may have heard Goethe's famous quote about this. What you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. What you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. With confidence, we harmonize more easily with others. We become less rigid. We become more accepting and dexterous in how we approach situations and people. We're able to stand on our own 2 feet when we're confident, without making other people wrong, and also hold on to what is true for us. The next element of self-reliance is power. Power. Not egotistical power, not material power, not worldly power, but the power that animates us. Emerson said, "Place yourself in the middle of the stream of power and wisdom which animates all. Then you are without effort impelled to truth, to right, and a perfect contentment." So moving toward that stream of power and wisdom which animates all. When we do that, we're filled with universal life force that propels us forward in our seeking. We learn to drink from the energy of curiosity and devotion and beauty. We're animated by the desire to grow, to learn, to expand, to discover. Seekers tend to see life as a school for wisdom, for healing, for awakening. And we're often as interested in what we learn, even when we fail, as we are in material results. The more present we are, the more this power is drawn through us and into the world. And it's this empowerment, this spiritual empowerment, that enables seekers to fulfill our function as visionaries, as envelope pushers, as pioneers, as pilot fish in the human stream. But we can't do this without courage, which is the next item on the self-reliance roster. As Emerson taught, do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain. Courage, though, is often a subjective matter. One man's minor achievement can be another man's major accomplishment, right? We need courage on the spiritual path to know what we know, to stand in our own difference. Many seekers grow up feeling like outsiders, like black sheep, like witnesses. And this spiritual courage, this willingness to go our own way, actually comes a bit more easily to us because we're so used to feeling other. It's important to understand, though, that courage isn't a constant. It's not a constant quality. Bravery that's unmodulated by humility is actually bravado. Authentic courage always carries an awareness of our own limitations and acceptance of vulnerability and frailty. This creates a flexible courage that enables the seeker to pick herself up when she's hit the wall and keep moving forward. The next component is love. Love. Without love, no seeker would bother making the effort to reach goals or states of being that can seem distant, if not unattainable. It's love that moves us toward truth and beauty. It's love that impels us to drop our illusions and become intimate with our experience. It's love that motivates us toward the sacred and away from sinister forces that conspire against our happiness. As Emerson put it, love is the masterpiece of nature, and that begins with self-love, which is different from loving the personality or loving the ego, the self-image. The truth is that the ego can't love itself. The ego cannot ever love itself, which is the final tragic irony of egotism and self-absorption. Without knowing who we are beyond the personality, beyond the ego mind, we can't experience self-love or self-reliance in any sustainable way. And that brings us to resilience, the ability to tolerate adversity and recognize opportunity in our obstacles. This is key to stamina on the spiritual path. Resilience is what enables us to say yes to what comes, and what helps us recognize the light that is hidden in darkness, the secret boons within grievous change that promises to instruct us and ultimately set us free. Resilience doesn't say that everything is for the best. Instead, it proves that there are always ways of transforming pain and loss and challenge into motivation, if we can release fixed ideas of desirable outcomes. Sooner or later, every seeker has to learn to locate the light source in shadowy places, and also appreciate the necessity of egoic failure to the success of the spirit. And that brings us to optimism, the next quality that we strengthen on the path of self-reliance. It's not a gullible, sentimental optimism we're talking about that tells you that everything's going to work out just fine. Instead, it's a durable, realistic optimism that's based on human potential. Emerson called this cosmic optimism. It's the optimism that comes from understanding that human beings are wired for freedom. We're wired for transformation and growth, creativity, expansiveness, endurance. This knowledge of our own potential is the seeker's greatest inspiration. Emerson warned, "Don't waste yourself in rejection, nor bark against the bad, but chant the beauty of the good." Don't waste yourself in rejection, nor bark against the bad, but chant the beauty of the good. This refusal to be swamped by negativity is essential to cutting a light path through a dark world, which most of us hope to do in one way or another. And that brings us to the final quality that we want to cultivate on the path of self-reliance. You can call it recognition of the divine within us. Most of us begin our spiritual journey looking for wisdom, God, truth outside of ourselves, and imagining a separation between what we long for and the one who is longing. Over time, though, we come to see that this separation is a delusion. The more we recognize that our own true nature is the thing that we're looking for, and that this nature is with us at all times, the less frantic we become about finding something. The more focused we grow on remembering what's already here. As Emerson put it, know yourself a man and be a god. Know yourself a man and be a god. The more secure we are in our spiritual identity, the less concerned we become with how others perceive us. Self-trust then comes naturally along with self-knowledge. We can finally relax into who we are and what we've always been. manifestations of divine intelligence, endowed with the qualities of our Creator. We realize that there's nowhere to go and there's nowhere to be, and that in fact, we were never lost. Now let's do a brief writing exercise together. I'd like you, please, to take 5 minutes to explore your own thoughts and feelings about self-trust on the spiritual path. Are you able to follow your own directives? Or do you rely on external authority for permission in your life as a seeker? How is this working for you? Be specific, and we'll take 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll come back together as a group.